Thank you. I can probably just end my show right now because the other speakers ahead of me have done such a wonderful job of capturing a lot of what I'm going to do, but I'll give it a shot anyway. My goal was kind of to, so I'll take you back to through my career. I've been doing this for a couple of years. And when I was a general forecaster, or actually at the time was a lead forecaster in Indianapolis, and I remember my MIC was John Curran. And I went in there one time and I worked up enough guts to say to John, and I respected him and he respected me, and it was good. And I said, you know, John, I'm just curious, what is it that you do? You're an MIC, everybody out here does all the work, what do you do? And he smiled at me and he said, well, I'd like you to sit with me a day and go through. It would be really cool for you to see that. And I did, of course, say, I understand you do stuff, it's just I don't ever see it. So this is my attempt at opening the curtain from the great and powerful Oz and saying what is happening in the office in the front when you're out doing all the work, and most of you are out there operational doing your work. So I thought maybe you'd like to see that. Now, I suggested this to my wife. We were driving in the car one day and she says, oh my God, really? You're going to put these people to sleep. So with that, I'm going to do my best. I also know I'm between you and your break. So we're going to get through this, hopefully pretty quick. And then you can ask me questions if you want, but I won't have any answers. So I want to do a quick review of the whole thing. Now, this is great because for an hour and 10 minutes or whatever, you've heard all this, so I don't really need to spend a lot of time in this slide. I do want to spend a little bit of time tell you where I was. So Geraldine showed you a picture of the office and it was bare. I was on the other hydro team. I went out. I push hard in my office. We have a problem with hydro. They don't think it happens. We had a meeting one time and everybody's, it doesn't matter. And I said, okay, we're changing that. You all are going out after hydro events and seeing the impact it has. So I have to lead that. So I said, I'm glad to go do that. So I went out and was doing hydro stuff. So all this stuff goes down while I'm an hour away, and I get a call from the lead forecaster going, we got problems, you know, and okay, do you need me to come back? No, you stay out, we'll bring back the other guy who happens to be the service hydrologist for the office, not service hydrologist, but our focal point. So, okay, good, I'll stay out here, then I'm not in your hair. So off they went, and then an hour later I get a call from Chris Strager, who is the regional director and my boss, and he's like, what do we need to do? So we had a nice conversation on the side of the road while I'm sitting on the side of the road looking at stuff. But so the bottom one there was my big point is I've been doing this for 33 years and I've never seen an office evacuated before. What the heck do I do to support my staff and support those that are coming in? It means a lot to me. We're going to talk about people and a lot of the other things that have been happening. That's very important. The other thing that was very reassuring to me, I know my staff. I know operationally, I very rarely have any issues. They're just tremendous at what they do. So I'm very secure in the fact that it's getting done, and they communicate with me. So I know everything's good. And that, as a boss, is outstanding. Because it's like, okay, I can breathe easy, everything's good. So the third bullet there is what that point was trying to make. So, number one, on here, it's all taken care of. Geraldine and I had I got back from the rivers, and she was working hard on trying to figure out what she was going to do, and so we kind of pulled her aside and said, what do you think about just going to ICS? And you be incident commander, and that means you can't be operations chief. You have to get out of operations. You have to stay IC. With reluctance, she did it, and she asked a lot of good questions. I hung around, but then I said she was when I got out of her hair, right? So, and she did her great job, and never had to mess with it again. So on to the second one. In this talk, when I refer to management, I'm referring to Central Region headquarters, especially senior management, one of which is in the back here, and he'll probably slap me upside the head if I ever do anything. No, seriously. But Scott is here. He was there, part of the team. The Omaha, all the non-bargaining people, so the SUE, WCM, MIC is who I'm talking about when I'm talking management, and also Hastings, of course, not to leave out my own staff, because they're tremendous. So my personal focus. So when I got back, or I'm driving back and I'm thinking about what do I got to do? How can I help? How can I not be in people's way? How can I help? How do I best accommodate for Becky coming over and visiting? You know, and I want to be a good host so that they can do their job. How do I best accommodate my staff, who's going to have to pull a lot of extra time over the weekend? And weekends are traditionally not well staffed. It's hard to find people. How are we going to do all that? So those were kind of my focus. So I wanted to put up here a little more about what are they, not only the players, but what were their roles? And so this is probably, for many of you weather service people, you may understand this, but it's kind of a good review. So what does Region do? It's kind of like going into John Curran and saying, what is it you do, Scott? You know, I mean, they have a lot of duties. They do a lot of things, and they support us. We criticize a lot, but they're there making our lives a lot easier. I got to work up there for 4 months, believe me. You don't see all the stuff they get to do. So they're looking for large scale. We're very focused on our CWAs and our backups and what's going on, our partners. Right, Brian? Where'd you go? There you go. We're worried about making our partners and serving them as best we can with the best science we got. The facilities. They're the ones who really manage the facilities. With money, resources, things like that. They do the communication. So we have Chris here at the Rock. They're the ones taking the information they got, and headquarters needs to, above Central Region, National needs to know what's going on so they can make sure that we have the resources we need and can speak to the senators and congressmen, stuff like that. And then they really own all the resources. If I need anything, I ask them, they find it and get it to us. Okay, so their role is huge. Omaha, big mission that they had on their shoulders at that time. They're trying to deal with getting their mission, right, but also the people. Holy cow, the people. We'll talk about that a little bit coming up. And then facilities. They got an office to worry about. Are they going to come back to a destroyed office or what? And then for me, our office, not me, but me, Rick and Mike, my WCM and Sue too, we're worried about our mission, meeting, as Geraldine said, we had all kinds of heck going on too. And we were dealing with that and then picking up for Omaha too. And then how are my people going to handle this, all the stress and stuff they have? So we each had individual similar missions, but a little bit different. I think the biggest thing there is, I think Becky referenced this, was people was always our number one thing. And I'm going to talk about that and give you an example of one of the meetings that we had with the group of us. But that's kind of the order. So that we did. Communication. I know everyone in this room that's spoken so far has talked about communication. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, it's just key to everything we do, and when we fail, it's because of communication. You can always track it back. So Geraldine did a great job. This talk's going to be so easy. Geraldine did a really nice job of talking about how we set up a daily call, because Omaha's management was not on site. Yet Becky's used to their style, their schedule, everything else, and we're trying to accommodate them and meet what they're doing, not just Becky, but the people coming from. And we're trying, how do we meet what you need? And I don't want to screw up your schedule. We don't want to make you work our schedule. What hours do you work? We don't know that when we're trying to help you man things. So we had worked through a lot of things. So we needed to have that tete-a-tete thing between the management and just talk. It was, by the way, it was very effective because we had the Omaha people in the room when we did it. So Becky could ask her question, or Dave could ask this question, or something, a specific question about how do I do blah, 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 blah. Becky referred to this I saw a lot with the Omaha people. They were talking to each other all of the time on their phone. And it wasn't, do you want to play Monopoly tonight? It was, they were talking about things. How are we going to manage this? How are we going to do this? Oh my God, Hastings. You should hear that MIC. He comes out and he never stops talking. It's like, they're doing important things. But the most important one is where I want to, this one I think is where I want to open the curtain for you. The three of us, the Central Region Senior Management and the two offices, talking about what are our options if this goes on for different various times. I think this was the one that's probably most important. So whenever we get on the calls, you should know your RD led those. And he says, first thing, every call, how are the people? Who's directly impacted? How? What can we do to help them? Who's indirectly impacted? Does anybody have any emotional issues? Are we getting them help? Are we handling these things? First thing, every time. Okay? Next thing, mission. Becky talked about the weather radios. We talked about that a little bit. What's our backup? Why doesn't this work? We got to do something about this. Well, they probably took an action, and I'm sure it's being looked at. I don't know anything will ever come out of it. It's been talked about before, but those things happen. So that was an example. We talked about many things with mission, but it was always Chris, Ken, Scott asking, are you meeting your mission? Yep, we're meeting it. Okay, good. Or they'd hear we were. That was great. So the tools, that was a big eye-opener, was the people from Omaha trying to come in, and because we don't use the same set of tools, they couldn't, it wasn't comfortable for them to come in a time where they needed to be comfortable, you know, to do their job. And that was very frustrating for me. I was like, what can we do about this? So that was something I've taken a little torch and gone on for service backup. You know, I'm always talking about that when I'm talking to managers now. So yeah, so that was that. Facilities was always big talk about. Okay, so this is where, real quick, go through that stuff. I think I've got some slides coming up that talk more specifically about this, but short-term and long-term, we had to plan. We didn't know how long they were going to be out. I remember the first call, we're talking about, and I said, well, what, you know, you guys may be back open in a week. You know, are we planning for that? Because we were talking about all these long-term things. And Suzanne goes, yeah, but Steve, we're talking about a levee. Are they going to be able to repair it in a week? And will it, when the snow melts off the Rockies and we get our next surge of flood water, will it just wipe out again? Oh, and what about all the bridges that are ruined? How do my employees get to work? And so it was like, oh yeah, all things that somebody had to think about these things and talk about, so we had a plan, right? That's what's going on behind the curtain, is we're talking to each other about this. And how do we deal with that? So people, I think I've mentioned this before, so I'm going to skip on through this slide. You know, there was definitely talk every time of one or two people their houses were about to be flooded, or could have been, but I think they worked out okay. Mission, again, grade A. Everything I heard from every customer I've talked to was fantastic. So, good, that makes it easier. Now we can focus on this other stuff that has a lot more variables and intangibles. So, so this is the one I'm going to talk about that Suzanne and I, at one point, this was like the third call I think we had, Scott, and we were talking about, let's talk, so we talked about many options, right? A week out. We didn't talk about that one too much. A month out was what we kind of figured, I think at that point, was we were going to be a month. And then we were planning for, what if it's a year? Wow, thought about that? Wow, that would be tough, right? So we were talking, well, what, is it better to put the office at the Rock and put them on the AWIPs up there? And we were talking about that, and that all sounded like a great idea because we got contract hotels, we've got, it's close enough, it's about the same distance, maybe a little bit farther to, is it a little farther to Kansas City, Omaha people, than Hastings? But you know, we were trying to keep close, worrying about all that stuff. But then Suzanne and I, after the call, we picked up the phone and started talking, and I went, you know, Suzanne, what happens if they've got a severe weather episode? Who at Region is proficient at issuing, to call in for extra people to help them issue severe thunderstorm warnings? So we started talking about that, and you start thinking about all the things. Isn't it more advantageous to be at a WFO where there's other people sitting there that do this every day, and they can jump right in and help you out? And probably the severe weather is moving out of our area in years anyway, so we're already well aware of what's going on. And so you got people there that you can call in. So that was one of those great things. But I don't think Becky or any of the people at the Omaha office even knew these conversations were going on, because they were doing what they had to do, which was focus on their mission. So, and we talked briefly about going to the NRD, the Natural Resource District is what that is, and where the management was sitting planning. There's no way, they don't have AWIPs, they didn't have anything to do, so that wasn't an option. You couldn't put a trailer there because it was underwater, and the threat was there, and they may not have been able to drive to work. So Omaha being there at their site was not going to work. So it was looking more and more like it was going to be us if that went on. So my takeaway, number one's always going to be there. I don't care what we're talking about. I don't care if it's a family argument or whatever. Communication is key. This was such a critical situation. I felt as a manager it was a good opportunity for my staff to use a great management tool that has been proven, the ICS structure. We used it and successful. It wasn't my fault that they succeeded. It was they did it, and that was great. Managers need rest too. You saw Suzanne. I love that Suzanne would be on these calls, and we'd all ask her, Suzanne, how much sleep you had? That's not important. Yes, it is. You can't think clearly if you haven't slept well. No, I need to be here. No, you need to get some sleep. And we had to have that argument to really get her to go home and get some sleep. Her staff recognized it. They mentioned it. They care about her. You know, so you want that. So, but managers need to be 30,000, and you can't do that if you're sleep deprived or embedded in operations. So that was why we're behind the curtain and away. Is I need to stand back and look at the whole situation and survey the field. So. And I think this has always been true, and Region knows it, but it's a great reminder, and it's a great reminder for us that Region doesn't always have all the answers. Is that surprising to anybody out here in the field? Yeah. So that's the key, is that reinforced that. That, you know, there were some things that we had to offer in this planning thing. And I got just a minute or two left, right? Okay, so I am done. You can ask me questions, or you can go to break, and I'm game for either.
You can ask onward. No.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question because I may not get too many more chances to ask you this as a MIC at least. I think we've all wondered as management teams how applicable our CoOPs are. You know, we dust them off, we look at them. This may be more of a question that I should send to Suzanne, but I was curious with the interaction with her and what you had. How many holes did you find in it? Because I've always felt there's probably a ton of holes that you just cannot think of ahead of time, and then you're left to just kind of just wing it.
Yeah, great question. And we talked about that briefly on how, one, we didn't test it enough to try it out. We all went, yeah. Two, I think the reason we don't is we do it. Every time we have severe weather event, we're kind of testing our CoOP in a way, or backup, going into backup, we're testing our CoOP. This was a very rare event, right? It's not going to happen, probably, well, it might there again. They may have put the office on stilts, I don't know. But I don't know how the airboats to get you in and out, I don't know. But seriously, I think the CoOP, I always looked at the CoOP as a guide. I don't think it was built to tell me how to do everything. It was built to say, have this in place, have this resource in place, have thought ahead for a couple of things, but leave yourself some room to manage, because we're people, you know, and people all have different needs. And so I would answer that with the CoOP is there as a tool, guide, you manage, you follow that and you manage inside of that.
Thanks, Steve.
Scott?
Can I pile on that answer?
Please do.
So we recognize at Region that the CoOP isn't the solution. And if you put it in context, this is the only incident where we've had a WFO evacuated for weather, for environmental phenomena. Everything else has been black mold or fire in the, you know, from equipment burning to small stuff. Something totally new. It also made us look at the workload, short-term, long-term, and we had this backup system with our neighboring offices, and yet the offices that had the most flexibility to serve you weren't your neighbors.
Right.
How do we adopt? And so there's a lot of work and a lot of study being put into how do we make this more flexible? How do we get changes in AWIPs so we can go ad hoc? How do we make sure backup tapes are off-site so everyone's available and do, you know, loading from different perspectives? This was a wake-up call in more ways than one. And I think the after-action report that was written does a great job capturing that, getting it all solidified and changing the culture. Again, that's the other part of it. We're used to having our backup office right next door to us and having one or two folks that we're working with. How do we change it so that Bismarck, who is one of the few offices not having flooding, could have participated? a lot of lessons learned.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. So we are going to take a little break here for about 10 minutes. So when the big hand gets to the 10,